Hi, this is Zena Harris.
And I'm Mark Rabin.
Welcome to the tie-in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the tie-in. Today, we're speaking with Neel Vasavada. He's the founder and CEO of Overdrive Energy Solutions, and he's been working to bring sustainable energy technology to the live events world and beyond. And I was first introduced to Neel through a mutual friend of ours, Will Heegard, back in late 2021. He was the one who first made the introduction, and I was first introduced to Overdrive. So looking forward to speaking with you, Neel. And to start things off, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into this.
This is sort of like a happy accident of my professional career. I started um, with EV and hybrid electric vehicle technology back in 1994,
Wow.
Hmm.
working on student projects at the University of Wisconsin, and then later on doing things with Ford and Chrysler and General Motors and the U.S. Department of Energy. I went from there to working in motorsports and starting a company that did control systems and data acquisition systems for prototype development, um, one-off and motorsports vehicles. In that role, some of our early customers, because of my background in the EV space, were early stage EV manufacturers, including Tesla. Um, I think it was during Model S development before it was even released. We provided them with data acquisition systems. Um, also, zero electric motorcycles. We did work for the U.S. Department of Energy as part of the Progressive Automotive X Prize. So I had exposure to the EV world throughout all of that. Then in 2008, I got an opportunity to help with some business development projects, and that led to me working to build um, divisions of a number of suppliers for live entertainment, mainly in the large scale concert and musical festival land. So I went from working with EVs and battery technology and things like that to live concert production. And my background as an engineer led me to places like I'm now on the board of directors for the Event Safety Alliance. And I worked on both technical issues, logistics issues, and business development. When the pandemic happened, um, didn't have a whole lot to do. There were no shows. And I began speaking again with some of my contacts from the US Department of Energy. You know, I um I started experimenting with, some of the technologies and really, understanding how far the technology had progressed in the time that I've been messing with it. And I had this inkling that this is excellent for live event power and really portable power in general because we crossed a point where runtime for a battery power station, it's a system that has a battery for energy storage and typically an inverter to make the power. um, they're roughly the same size, weight, etc., as an equivalent diesel or gasoline generator, with the same runtime. If you look at a Honda um, 6,000-watt generator these days, um, they kind of run the same amount of time at the same loads on a tank of gas as you would a roughly equivalently sized battery electric system, right? So, you know, with that little kernel, um, started thinking about and building out an entire ecosystem that says, the disadvantage is it takes a lot longer to refuel. The advantages are, you know, are quite a number of them, right? There's obviously the clean, there's the silent, there's the sustainable, but there's a lot of flexibility over where you can place it. There's more flexibility on how you distribute power. There's more flexibility on how you deal with changes in load or spec or things like that. So by leaning on the things that are advantageous to battery power stations versus traditional diesel or gasoline powered power sources, we were able to come up with a system that was more reliable than diesel generators. That is obviously cleaner and more sustainable, but also cost effective. And that's one of the I think the key points here is that by leveraging how battery power stations can provide power better than diesel, by looking for those use cases and leaning into those use cases, we're able to design a system that could replace diesel generators cost effectively and give the client, give the audience, give the artist a net better result by almost any metric. So that was the idea. That's how it came about.
We'll get into the technology a little bit later in the conversation, but maybe tell us a little bit about Overdrive and what Overdrive does and your mission, and maybe some of the, large projects and artists that you've worked with.
Okay, well, Overdrive started with me and Boxer Hardison, who owns a company called Bigger Hammer Production Services. It's a very well-known and very well-respected production services company, provides a lot of crew. Boxer also has a long history as a production manager and a tour manager. And Boxer's a conservationalist. He's had solar on his home and on his business for a long time. He drives, I think he has all EVs now. He's like me. He's got a couple old Vespas in the garage, a Ducati too, so we actually, we like our fossil fuel powered toys, and we believe that there's a place for them, but we also understand that, when we're at our homes, when we're in our work, when we're sitting in traffic on the 405, there's a better way. So Boxer, as my co-founder, came from a very applications standpoint and a practical sustainability standpoint. And Boxer has been a vegan for almost 40 years, so he really does put his money where his mouth is when it comes to sustainability. And then a little after we started, I found what must be the only other person in live entertainment with my crazy background, right? And I have this background that has engineering and sustainability, and then went to rock and roll. Well, Sean Jacobs, our other partner, he has a master's in electrical engineering. His focus was PV solar technology, and through an interesting chain of events, he ended up being what we call the pig pilot. And for those of you not in live entertainment, Roger Waters, is a well-known touring artist that's been touring for decades and decades, large-scale shows. One of his props that's been around since, I believe, the 90s, every show has a large inflatable pig, and actually now an inflatable pig and a sheep. And Sean ended up responsible for the pig and the sheep for Roger Waters, and has gone on to have a career as a well-regarded technician. They call them carps in our world. It's carpenter, but they do a lot more than sawing and cutting wood. And again, also an expert on inflatables. So during the pandemic, Sean and I also kind of got together, and it's like, well, hold on, we both have these backgrounds. We both feel like this should work. Let's go and play with it. And our first event, which was even actually before Sean joined, was a movie night on the beach for my fitness organization, the gym I go to. I'm very fortunate. I live in Santa Monica, California. We had a beach that was outdoors. We had a beach. I'm sorry. We have a fitness group that's outdoors on the beach, and we helped them put on a movie night. It was 16 months from that to powering Billie Eilish's headliner set, part of it at Lollapalooza. Yeah, and in the, roughly 3 years since that movie night, we've done over 50 events. We've uh, we've I have to finish this year's calculations, but I'm pretty sure we're solidly over a dozen megawatts of sustainable energy deployed. Um, we've done uh, we've focused on high impact um, clients where we can have real effective results transparently. So our clients have included Coachella and Stagecoach for AEG. We did South by Southwest this year. We've done two Luck Reunions, which is a boutique festival that Willie Nelson puts on as Ranch. We did Google I/O, which is their largest developer conference. It's at Shoreline Theater at Menlo Park. We've done that twice now. We've worked with AEG major festivals all over the country. Well, actually, all over Southern California right now. Let's see here, just this year, done gigs at last year technically is Dodger Stadium. This year we did two at the Rose Bowl. We just finished one at Pomona Fairplex. We worked with, movie stuff with HBO, Capitol Records, Interscope. We did a Warner Music Group, I believe it was Warner's, I hope I'm right, Grammy party. We've worked with the U.S. Marine Corps at Camp Pendleton. It's been a heck of a ride. But I think, the big takeaway for this is, oh, by the way, when I said transparency, every single activation we do, we record all of the input and output data for every single power source we have. And the reason for that is I want full transparency. There's still a lot of people who are skeptical if this works. And, what's incredible is they're skeptical if this works after 50 events with hundreds of thousands of people. But, that's why we're doing this and we're getting there. And Mark, I've got to tip my hat to you. I think that you're one of the pioneers in deploying these systems and building systems that were more than just something for camping and things like that. You really led the way. So I thank you very much for doing that. And, now it's up to us, people like us and our clients and the audiences to spread the word that you don't have to use diesel, gasoline, natural gas, whatever fossil fuel generator in order to power our events or really provide temporary power anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, Neel, you and I met just a few weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago, at the Green Building Conference, actually. And I was introduced to you in Overdrive and your systems. I saw you hauling them out at the end of the conference. And I'm coming at this more from a film and TV production background and not so much from a live events background. And Mark, makes fun of me sometimes for not knowing, or just it's all new to me on the live event side. But when you say, can you help me just understand when you say like we did Coachella and we did Stagecoach, and what does that mean? Are you powering the whole thing? Are you powering a part of it? Are you, what does that mean for deploying these systems at these events?
Well, I think it means that we're powering a part of it, but we got to be careful with that question because nobody powers all of an event, right? Okay. There's grid power. There's generators that were brought by the promoter. There's generators that were brought by vendors. There are battery systems already out there that people are using in day-to-day production. I'm sure some of you guys, if our audience has live event backgrounds, there's all of these LED cans, right, that are used for lighting that have batteries built in, used for scenic and everything like that. So yeah, we provided part of it, and that part is getting bigger year on year. In fact, that's one of the cool things. Two other fun facts that we're very proud of. But I also, every time I say something about Overdrive's successes or accomplishments, I really want people to remember that a big part of that is showing that everything really does work and is effective. It's not just a pat on the back. And one of those pats on the back is that all of these clients have come back larger. And you know what? We haven't had a single client that did an event with us last year that's doing an event this year that didn't come back. And when I mean bigger, I'm talking like Stagecoach was 3 times as big. Google I/O was 4 times as big. you know?
Wow.
So long answer to your short question, no, we don't power the entire event. My goal is to be able to claim that we replaced all of the diesel power sources at more events because we've already done that. But I want to be able to do that more and more. And of course, we want to be able to do that at a very large scale. We want to be able to run all of the power at Coachella. We want to run all of the power at a large stadium concert. Um, but the nice thing about this technology is it's very scalable. So we don't have to run the entire event in order to have a win, and that win really is building the marketplace right now. And
Neel,
Zena,
do
I am
you?
sorry, I got to say something real quick. I'm
Mhm.
sorry I didn't acknowledge you at the beginning. I wasn't sure if you were a producer that would hide in the background or you're going to be part of this conversation. So I'm really glad that you are now.
Oh,
And in that case, hello, Zena.
hello,
She's the
Neel.
guru of sustainable production. She's the OG, the one.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
I, I know
You
you love
never
that when I
know.
say that, Zena.
Oh
That's
my
so funny.
gosh. Oh my gosh. No, it's great. It's great. And it's so cool, Neel. Like I'd heard of Overdrive, but there's so many. It's actually super cool. There's so many companies out there ramping up and trying to do all this stuff. And at the conference a few weeks ago, people were like, "Oh, have you met Neel? You got to meet Neel." And so it's really nice to be able to connect and connect some of those dots.
Then
Well,
Zena's like,
thank you.
I met Zeal.
I know.
I gotta talk to this guy.
Well, Zena, I think your question though leads into like an interesting topic conversation. And that is that what we're finding is that the way that you can effectively use sustainable energy looks a lot different than traditional power sources, right? So even a simple question like, did you power the whole thing? Doesn't give a straightforward answer. Even a simple question like, are you going to power the whole thing in the future? We're definitely going to do events. We have already done several events where we did this on a smaller scale. We're going to do events where there's a big old diesel generator as part of the system, and it will make sense, and it will still be a significant cost savings. I'm sorry, carbon savings without a significant cost increase. So you know the 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 way we operate, and I think the reason why people are hearing our names and everything is we're taking a very, very unique approach to sustainable energy.
Neel, are you building your own hardware, or are you renting, buying other people's equipment? And then where are you focusing your obviously limited bandwidth and resources, on the innovation of this technology?
No simple answers here.
Nope. Oh, it
Um,
depends. No.
we we buy some stuff, we rent some stuff, we build a lot of our own stuff. The majority of what we have is gear that we've built ourselves. We very often, in fact, I would say we rarely use things that we rent um, the way that most people use them. They're usually paired with our gear in a system of some sorts, and we don't ever leave anything that we buy alone. Everything that we do, um, everything that we've done typically has some modifications in order to reach, to achieve the following goals. First is interoperability. We want everything to operate as a system. Okay, so at this point in time, we are already monitoring and controlling all the systems we have, from remote. We have gone as far as to set up our own networks for stability, our own communications. We use, we typically actually use 900 megahertz uh, Wi-Fi systems that can travel up to 1.3 kilometers and uh, allow us to operate on a festival site where cell phone signals, are often problematic and things like that. And the list goes on and on and on. So interoperability, like I said, is one part of the equation. Scalability is another. I don't look at a piece of hardware as in a vacuum. It's how is this piece of hardware going to allow us to um, to adapt to more needs on a site. Modularity is a huge deal for us too. Yeah, it's again, it's not a simple answer, but the result is simple. The result is we can put together using our own gear that we might have purchased, and gear that we've rented into a solution that is, again, and I'll say over and over again, it's sustainable, it's clean, it's resilient, it's reliable, and it's cost effective.
And power, I always joke, is binary, right? It's either on or it's off at the end of the day. And if we do our jobs right, people notice it even less, right? Because there's no diesel generator, chugging along in the background. And obviously you've had a lot of successes, and we want to hear a couple stories as well, but also, has there been moments when there has been where you have had a major sort of failure or a major learning experience on site in live action?
A lot of learning experiences. Failures, in complete honesty and truth, and I have data that validates this, and you can talk to all of our customers. Nope. Over 50 events, we've had one major failure. Was in one of our first events, March of last year, so March of 2023. We did have a stage go down after about 3 hours into a 6 hour festival, because I accidentally, it was early on, and I had the wrong battery system spec for it, and I did not have the backup at the location I wanted. And that really, that one failure taught us a lot.
Yeah.
In terms of downtime over this 50 events we've done, this is a real number. We have over 99.9% uptime. So that 4 hours or so that unit was down is the only 4 hours that a client of ours asked us to power something and it wasn't powered when it was supposed to be in 2 years.
And so that's which also brings up the other point that people think diesel generators are super reliable, but they go down all the time. And they'll have multiple diesel generators chugging along just to make sure that if that diesel generator goes down, that there's another one there.
Yeah, diesel generators typically deployed with a backup.
Yeah.
Like they say, get two just in case. After 100 years, we still don't feel like our product is reliable enough that you should be able to be fine with just one. You got to get two.
Yeah.
That's how that's how the industry works, right? Zena, am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. It's how it works. I mean, there's always a backup, always. So.
And I'm not saying that there doesn't need to be that we shouldn't have backups for critical infrastructure. We have backups for critical everything, even in areas which are super, super reliable. But don't claim that one technology is more reliable than the other when you always, as a practice, not only get a backup, but it gets used.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And one other proof in the pudding of that is these last 2 years, one of the most entertaining things is how often we get a call that says a generator has gone down. Do you have a battery system that you can throw up there?
Yeah. Yeah. And, you can have, if you feel you need a backup, you can have a backup battery to the battery. It doesn't have to be a backup, generator to a generator. You
stole my thunder right there, Zena.
No,
I mean, that's like
man.
something that I've been saying. We're already at the point where I think that backing up battery systems with diesel is just silly. Yet that's what's common these days. Oh, okay, well, we'll try the sustainable energy thing, but it's going to be really expensive because we have to get all redundant diesel generators just in case. So, putting yourself in the shoes of a production manager, I can get that, but that's not because a diesel backup is necessary. That's because of their unfamiliarity with, what battery systems can do, which is why our focus really is educating the market and continuing to bring impactful, well-working power solutions, where it'll be undeniable.
Yeah. Are the artists also, are you working closely with the artists, and are they aware of what's going on behind the scenes? You mentioned Billie Eilish as well. Are they pushing for this, and do they understand what's really going on?
Some are, and we've worked directly with a few artist management. but I think that that's going to be happening more and more. We haven't really made a push to, and that's actually interesting, Mark. It's been stewing in the back of my head is this campaign where I just simply want to reach out to all the artists who talk about sustainability. You know, I've never worked with, nor do I really have any direct connections. I'm sure, you know, we've been in here long enough where we can find our way to them. And when we're ready, we're going to talk to Jack Johnson's management. We're going to talk to Dave Matthews Band's management, and we're going to talk to Bonnie Raitt, and we're going to talk to all of these other artists who have spoken about sustainability and you know, offer them the solution. Part of the thing is that we want to make sure that we have the scale, that we have the ability in terms of gear and, you know, and people and depots and everything else before we take that on, because that success rate that we have is of utmost importance to us. You know, we don't want to give anyone the opportunity to keep spreading this narrative, which is simply false, that sustainable energy is for some reason less reliable, more expensive. And I think that a lot of what I do right now is addressing those points. We can definitely grow the market, but the market will grow much more effectively if people are doing it because they want a better result, not because they're trying to check a sustainability box.
Yeah, in film and TV, word of mouth on this stuff spreads quite rapidly. Would you say that's the same in the music world?
I think so, yeah. I think, and I mean, does that really apply to any technical space with specialized tools? And this is a specialized tool, so I think that, you know, what we're doing, and when I say live events and beyond, that's because Overdrive's, you know, goal is not to be the largest portable power provider in live events. Our goal is simply to revolutionize how we do portable power. You know, we want to be a portable power utility. We want to be a company that, whether it's a construction site, it's a disaster relief site like our you know, our friend Will Heegard does, whether it's a music festival, right? And mad props to Footprint Project for, you know, they really set the stage for a lot of this, right? Because they went out there and solved a real problem, which was temporary power in disaster relief. You know, so we're big supporters of them, as I know you are, Mark. But getting back to it, you know, the goal is much greater than that, and that's why driving this culture and being and showing the world how useful and reliable it is on a large scale is so important.
In terms of, you alluded to it earlier, and Zena and I talk a lot about this around planning, you know, your power budget, or you call it maybe an energy budget. So can you speak to us a little bit about the upfront pre-planning, how you're making sure that you have the right system, the right duration? How does that process work? Because it's all about the numbers, it's all about the data, and at the end you have to be reporting on that to make sure that you can show to your client, you know, what you've done. But can you talk us through that process? Because that's, in film, we talk a lot about that, literally sustainability, and this has to be part of the pre-planning. It has to be part of the planning, has to be integrated throughout, and has to be monitored. So yeah, any sort of knowledge and tidbits on planning, and whether you call it a power budget or energy budget, for our listeners.
Once again, not an easy answer, and probably not what you're going to expect. Okay, I take all of the planning efforts with a big old grain of salt. So tell me, guys, how's it working out for y'all? How's that planning working out? When you sit down and you plan that power budget, tell me, how close are you at the end of the event? When you look at the data, how close are you from where you started, where you thought it was going to be?
They're using like 1/3 of the capacity of the generation on site, maybe.
Maybe, but then how about, have you ever had the opposite happen? You ever seen what an electric water kettle does?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, you know what? I might have to restate all of my claims, because we have had failures well before I started this at Burning Man, before Overdrive existed. You talk about like failures that teach you something. this has stayed with me all the way through the journey of Overdrive, right? And it was when the DJ setup run by a solar battery system uh, at Burning Man got taken down by a well-meaning bartender who was building craft cocktails and plugged an electric, like a water pot into the DJ booth. So let me try to answer your question, okay? The simple fact is that people are we're not very good at predicting our loads, and diesel generators have worked so well because you can oversize them easily, and it doesn't really matter. The cost of power generation with diesel doesn't scale as well with size, or I'm sorry, it scales inversely, right? Like that I don't know if that 6,000 watt generator is going to be enough. Get a 12,000 watt one. It's not much more, right? So because of that, we've never been really good at predicting. I just got a power plan from a really, a company that knows what they're doing, and you'd appreciate this. What they did was they looked at all of the paper loads for someone put a lot of work into this, and I don't know if you see this you see this where you guys are, but someone built a spreadsheet where they looked up every single manufacturer's spec for every light and added it up and showed how they need 200 amps to run something that I swear is going to take 20.
Yeah.
And we see this all the time. So when you try to go from the generation point forward, you have to, you have to have the right data in the first place. And first of all, as most of the data that we have is not in use. Second of all, most of the loads we have are fairly variable. I mean, you guys have seen this. I don't know, again, in film and TV, how different it is, but LED wall that is all white at full brightness draws an order of magnitude more energy than, one does that's showing a typical video, except during the show, there's a couple of moments where they are going to turn it on full brightness and light up the whole crap.
Yeah.
Do you know when that's going to be? Do you know if it's going to be? Do you know that there wasn't a meeting the other night where the LD was thinking, let's try this. The lighting designer, same with music. I always say subs is everything. And holy crap, guys, if you haven't been into it, if we all just got rid of the bass, and I am a funk guy, so we're not getting rid of bass anytime soon. we could run our entire music world on nothing, So it's really hard, first of all, to spec the loads that you need. Right? Second of all, you'd never know what someone's going to add. And the most innocuous things, like the electric water kettle, anything where you're making heat with electricity, right? So you're powering an event, and the event starts early in the morning, and the folks working the check-in tent just had to bring a small space heater, shove it under that table, keep their feet warm, right? Are we now the power police? Are we gonna monitor what everyone brings on site and say, no, you can't do that? We live in a world where people are used to electrical outlets being like faucets. You turn it on, electricity comes out, right? So Overdrive has taken a very, very different approach. Okay, we look at the event layout, and we look at where the power drops need to be. What needs power? How much do we think it needs? And we build from there on backwards. We look at opportunities for where are we going to get energy? Where is there shore power on the site that we can charge things from? Where might we build a solar array? Do we want to have on-site solar? Do we want to have solar built into where we're working? What about other battery systems? What other battery systems are available to us? Charging, or battery swapping. Where can we have batteries that are either charging or fully charged, ready to go? What are the logistics involved in swapping those? And then monitoring and action. We're actually working to develop more comprehensive automated AI tools to do all of this. So now, when do we think we're going to have to manage charge? How are we going to do that? It really is a whole system. And it's a different way of thinking. And I struggle, honestly, with describing this in a way that doesn't sound very complicated. But what I can tell you is you come and watch us and our staff working at an event, and it's quite the opposite. It's simpler. It's at the snow values in Pomona, we replaced what I think was going to be 3 generators with 30 power stations, and it was actually simpler and more reliable. So that process, the short answer after my long answer is, um, it's a completely different process, and that's part of what we're trying to do is develop a company that doesn't just deliver you a generator. It gives you a whole process. And the simple fact is, we're already paying for that whole process. When you rent a generator, you're often renting a tech. You're getting
Yeah.
fuel service. You have to fuel. You have to put diesel in that generator, right?
Yeah.
You have to lay
You need
distro. You have to do
Yeah.
all of this stuff. So it's not like we don't have that. And one thing that we've realized is that deploying a generator actually takes more people than deploying battery systems. So we can have more skilled technicians. We can have technicians that operate at a little higher level than your average labor, and still keep the costs in line.
Sounds like full team approach, right?
It's
In doing this.
it's vertically integrated, and that's why we call ourselves, that's why someone gave me this idea just yesterday. So I'm trying it out with you guys, and it is that we are a sustainable portable power utility. We look at not just generating power, or I'm sorry, providing power, but we look at generating power, and we look at site layout, and we look at, a host of different aspects of the power grid in order to deliver the solution that a client needs.
You're a micro utility almost, or like
You could call us a micro utility. People say microgrids all the time. I'm not sure. The reason I'm shying away from that term is because it's already used to describe different processes than we do. So
yeah,
but it's still early days, right? And so I think the opportunity is to create that dialogue, to create what's in a name, right? It's important that we do name it right, but at the same time, I think what you're doing is really setting the stage for how this is going to be done at scale. And that's where it's really critical. I think a lot of people can do a small solar system or so on, but it's at scale. You mentioned a system, interoperability, scalability, modularity. These are all critical components to it. One thing that I'd love you to touch on quickly is the system management, right? The energy management. You've got boots on the ground. What does that back end software system look like? Do you have somebody sitting in a control room with like 3 monitors and making sure everything is being managed properly, or is it just someone working around on their phone or an iPad?
It'd be all of it. So first of all the tools that we use are web enabled and cloud enabled. At some events, we do set up like a control room set up at Coachella. It was in our RV, which was really nice because we have a quiet, air conditioned space to drink margaritas while we watch the video feeds. And sometimes it's me looking at my phone, sitting in my car. But one thing is that we've automated a lot of alerts and things like that, so you don't have to be staring at the dashboard all the time, and that's certainly helpful. But there's another concept in electrification that allows us to work like this. I always like to say, with battery systems, you can see the train wreck coming from miles and miles and miles away. Mark, I'm sure you've already been in this situation, but it's not uncommon that we're looking at data and saying, you know what, guys, there's 8 hours left of this event, and 5 hours from now, we're going to have to make a decision. Mm-hmm. And that's what we do. We sit back, and you don't have to fix problems right away. You can sit there and hang back and see, okay, is the power draw going to increase or decrease during the day? What are our options? I'll give you another real example from just a couple of weeks ago in Pomona. We had a large merch tent. And the loads were all said and done. It was probably pulling an average of 4,500 watts. We'd have peaks maybe in the 7,000 watt range. And that's because it was a 260-foot long tent with lighting, point of sale systems, fans, video monitors, all these sorts of things, right? And and so we're watching this, and we have plenty of energy, it seems, to get through the event. But we know that they want to load out. They're going to load all the merchandise out that night. They don't leave it laying around, right? So they're probably going to want to work all night. How late do they want to work? Is it going to be 2, 3? Well, one simple solution for making sure that they have light as long as they need it is to make sure that the power goes till dawn, right? So even though the event was done at 11 p.m., we made a decision, okay, we want to run till at least dawn. So what is that going to take? Well, we're going to have to swap some batteries out. Batteries are on in this case, it was 20 kilowatt hours of batteries. They're in a rolling case. One person can manage them. Having Sean as a partner, a guy who's been doing professional touring for as long as he has, you learn some interesting logistics lessons. And one is, with the right wheels in the right case, you can move anything. And I remember when he first, was talking about that, and I've been on plenty of tours and everything. I'm like, well, I don't know about that, and I've lived in a world where we lots of big stuff, stadium shows and things, so we're forking everything all the time. Well, you know what? It is true. It is absolutely, Zena, you could roll a 400-pound battery cabinet to the right location, no problem.
I think I have.
It's needed, you know how it goes. Like, all right. So when you get to a certain point, you might want to brake on it so it doesn't get away from you. If you're going up a ramp, all right. But that's one of those things, right? We have 20 kilowatt hour batteries. You know what else we have? We have 5 kilowatt hour batteries in their own cases that can be daisy chained to be that 20 kilowatt hour battery. So if you can't push that thing, guess what? We're going to have to put 4 batteries on a cart, or maybe move them one at a time. But we have all of these options, right? So what did we do? We looked at the situation. We said, we have 20 kilowatt hours of battery that's charging at a station that is 100 feet away at 8 o'clock, which is before doors close, but while headliners are going on and the traffic on the site is minimized. We're going to hot swap these batteries. Our systems do allow us to hot swap all the expansion batteries so that this thing will run till dawn the next day. And listen to all the parts of that decision tree, right? First is, are we going to do anything, what's different about all these different nodes? Is 11 p.m. end time of the event really apply to everything? Decision tree number 1. Decision number 2 then, okay, if it doesn't apply to everything, what things are going to be a problem? How long do we need it to run? What's the best way to replenish that power? All of these different things went into that decision. Not actually something that took a ton of physical effort, not something that took a ton of, anything, but it is a decision that doesn't get made in a generator context very often. And people don't understand always all the different variables that you have. But think about it. Once you manage that, once you master that practice, you know what you get? You get an event where we had power uninterrupted the entire time with that. There were 2 interactions with the gear for the entire runtime of that day. I'm sorry, I think doors were 10:40. There was a big deal about how they wanted to open doors at 10:40 a.m. Right? So from 10:40 a.m. to 11 p.m., we had to sit around and ponder 2 things, which was that, and then also what was the second one? Actually, I don't remember the second one. And I know I talked to someone about it. That's why. But really, there's only one thing that was memorable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a different way of thinking about work. We talk about that a lot. Different way of thinking about how you're going to power, the decision-making process is just slightly different. I know that sounds oversimplified, or could sound oversimplified. But I tend to think back of when we switched from flip phones to smartphones, it was kind of a little clunky in the beginning and we weren't quite sure. And now we're all whizzes on our smartphones and, that's just how we work. I feel like that's the transition that we're in right now. is, proving that this smartphone technology, like the battery technology, works in these different applications, and this is how we can use it. And in a couple of years, we're going to be whizzes on how to do all of this stuff.
I agree with you for the most part. I will take exception though with the analogy of the smartphone being clunky at first, because in this case, I don't feel that it is clunky. I feel it's unfamiliar.
Okay.
When I think clunky, I think of something that's slow, that's buggy, that's error prone, and things like that. I, I describe these things in the way I do because I want people to understand how different this is from a generator point of view, but it wasn't difficult.
Yeah.
It wasn't experimental. It was actually fairly straightforward. I think a better analogy would be, you know, flip phone versus a modern smartphone and give it to me versus my 13-year-old. My 13-year-old, he's gonna figure it out really quickly. I'm gonna be like, how do you open I can't get this flip to open, you know? So
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough.
We have two more questions here. One is, tell us the greatest, most proudest moment that you've had so far in your overdrive powering pursuits. Is there one moment that sticks out that you're like looking out over everything going, this is it. We're doing it.
um it's hard to identify a single moment because we have continued to, have successes in different areas, and it almost feels like sometimes every event we do is another highlight, right? This no values Pomona that I'm talking about was 250,000 square feet decarbonized, an entire, a large part of the entire entryway of the festival. That was a highlight in terms of square footage. Coachella, over 3,000 gallons of diesel saved. That was a highlight. Um, Long Beach Barbecue Festival. We do some food and beverage stuff. We're based in Long Beach, and so we like to help the local community. Or Venice Fest last weekend. You know, I live, very close to that, and I was like, let's go power the stages there. We didn't charge them. We're like, it's easy. It's right by our house. Don't use a generator here.
Yeah, exactly.
And I will tell you what the most what the best thing about this is, not the individual moments, but I would almost say that the era that we're in, so many people are appreciative. We get so many thank yous and uh, so many people that are supporting what we do, and that's the best thing about all of this.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. I know. It's that people aspect. I'm telling you, it's like
People want it. People
people
care.
want it. So totally. Okay, so last question here. And we're asking everyone this. So, there's no right or wrong, obviously, but we're curious if you were to create a new playbook and guiding principles about sustainability and entertainment, what would be the first thing on your list, or maybe one or two things on your list?
I think the first thing would be, boy, that is a tough question, because the first ask is not an easy one to make. And that is, forget everything you know, step aside, and take a moment to see how it can be done a different way. And the reason I say that is because, you know, education is very important to me. I think it's key to growing this business and having it move forward to help people understand. But we're more and more finding that the more time that they have spent in traditional power settings and diesel generators and things like that, the more they almost need to disconnect. It's easier to train and show lighting technicians and audio technicians and people who have to take five, you know, I don't know, banded 2-aught, right? And cable and plug it into a distro rack. Um, how we can do this than people at the other end of that cable plugging it into a generator, right? So this is a big challenge, is to tell people who are experts in their field, who've been doing this for, as long as I've been alive, who know their stuff, who are highly respected, and saying, I don't think you're going to really understand what we're talking about here. And that comes from experience working with many, many people, um, until you see it in operation in a different way. And that, I mean, it's not easy, and it certainly is not something that, this is not one of those, we like being right and we're going to show you how it's done. It's more of, you gotta let us set aside, or you've got to set aside your preconceptions. And the only way that I can find how to do that is for you to observe at this point. And that goes back to our last question. That's super satisfying. One of our partners, Richard Cadena, he's worked with us on many events. I'm working with him this weekend at an event in Burlington, Vermont. We're 100% sustainably powered show for the band Guster. Um, Richard is a highly, highly regarded lighting guy who's done lots of work with power and generators. He is an author. Some people say he wrote the book on event lighting because literally the textbook that he wrote is used, in programs around the world. He flies internationally to teach students on all this stuff. He came and did the first luck reunion with us, and subsequently did several events with us. And it's been really, really interesting watching like that change, the gears in his head. But we've done quite a few events now, and having him there has also been great at learning this stuff. But it's also, been an experience with him and us about learning what we have to unlearn and what's different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's
Yeah.
all about learning,
Well
right?
said.
Keeping an open mind, right? I think that's kind of the core of it. And if you can set aside, stuff and be open to new ideas, that's really going to propel you forward.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Neel. That was really enlightening, and I know a lot of our listeners will digest every single morsel of information that you've shared with us today. Thank you for your work that you've been doing here and moving the industry forward.
Thank you. And thank you both for the work you've been doing. To your audience, please do follow us on socials and stuff like that. And um, always feel free to reach out if you need anything or have any questions.
Yeah, and if you want to give
Awesome.
us a quick prompt on your website or social, please go right now and let.
It's overdrive.rocks, ROCKS. It's a real web domain, and we grabbed it. So, and then, from there at the bottom of the page, you can get to all our socials. We're on LinkedIn and Instagram and the rest. So,
Great.
all right.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Neel.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Yay. I just love, I love talking to him.
Yeah. He's one of the one of the leaders putting it in practice, right? And he's taken a lot of the principles and the philosophies that you and I have been talking about for many, many years, and taking it at scale and really hitting out of the park. And it's so interesting what he did say. Diesel generators do fail all the time. And that's just part of working with diesel generation, and they run out of gas, or you're not paying attention, or versus a well-planned battery power system with energy management and so on. You can really start to see those trends hours out, and done properly can be even more reliable. And he also alluded to hybridizing the system and creating systems with systems. And yeah, I think, wow, what a leader in the field, an innovator.
I know, totally. I loved his example about the event he did in Pomona. Just to say that, I feel like a lot of times in film and TV, we're talking about figuring out exactly what we need, so we know exactly how much power and all of this. And he's just like, well, let's just run the thing till dawn. That's an easy one. And so it's kind of like, he didn't fuss too much about it. He just let's just, make it work until the sun comes up, and we've got all our bases covered. So
yeah, it's a lot of the things that he said here will become commonplace in production in the next number of years. Like we can already see the trends, and just absolutely fascinating. I can't wait to call him up and chat further about all these things, and even go out to see some of his activations and production.
yeah, totally. I mean, like I said, I literally met him as he was rolling his his cases out to the truck, and I'm like, people are introducing me to him, and I'm like, Neel, hey,
Yeah.
and just super nice guy, just stopped and just talked it up right then and there. This is what we got. This is what we're doing. All of that. So I think just real openness to learn and do and scale, and keep having those successes. It's really impressive that they've been doing this. They're just doing it, right?
Yep.
And they're not waiting around. They're just out there making it happen.
And I think this goes back to a lot of the innovators that we are speaking with have both some technical background, but also can communicate these complex ideas and implement them and do it. So I think that's an interesting trend that we're starting to see here. Or if they didn't have a technical background to start, they became technically proficient in their field and were able to communicate and implement those complex ideas.
Right. Because when we're talking about sustainability, yeah, there's a lot of soft stuff one can talk about, but there's also a lot of technical aspects to this, and really understanding what you're working with in various contexts. So it's really important and really interesting how he's taking note of all the information, all the data, so that he can transparently report and use that in his next gig, right?
Yeah. Overdrive.rocks.
I know. I love it.
I love it too.
Hey, listeners. If you have a story about innovation and sustainability in entertainment, please get in touch with us at tieinpodcast@gmail.com. That's TIEIN podcast, all one word, @gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We may ask you to be a guest on the show.
If you like today's conversation and want to hear more, please like us and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Our designer is Aaliyah Kane. Music is by Peter Chapman. Our producer is Colin Miller.